Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ravneet and I am the Program Manager at Reactor London. Before we begin, please take a moment to read our Code of Conduct. We're all here to learn, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, and please be kind and considerate in the way you engage. Today is the first episode of the EMBRACE ERG Skills series. We will be running this series monthly, and each month we will be covering different topics. Today we are joined by Simone, Annette, Rosanna, and Charles, who work in the Azure team and will be highlighting the importance of sales in the technology industry. And with that, I will now hand over to Hasita and Hansen from the EMBRACE group, who will introduce the episode. Over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ravneet. And hi, everyone. My name is Hasita. It's really nice to meet everyone virtually. Thank you for your time today. And we just wanted to start off the session with Simone giving a quick keynote, about 10 minutes long, on what technical sales is and what skills recruiters look for today, transferable skills, etc. But more on that from Simone. And then we'll have a quick panel session with our panelists, our amazing panelists, Charles, Annette, and Rosanna, and also Simone will be part of that too, on any questions that you would have as an audience on any technical sales and, you know, pretty much the job sector when it comes to sales. And didn't want to forget that Hansen is going to be moderating this session and also hosting it along with me. So Hansen, if you want to wave, you know, Hansen will also be keeping an eye out for any questions in the chat box if we have any. So without further ado, I will forward it to you, Simone, just for a quick introduction and your keynote.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Hasita. I'm going to try to present to Teams, so bear with me one moment. Let's see if the technology works. It should do. So just give me a wave or a thumbs up when you can see the slide deck. Nothing's happening, it says. Right. Can you see it? Perfect. Excellent. So as already introduced by the team, we're here today to talk about the first in a very exciting series of helping encourage people of diverse backgrounds to think about sales careers. And we're gonna kind of cover the agenda for today is to cover four things really. It's really to demystify the idea of what sales actually is in the technology industry. And then we're going to look at the skills needed for a technical sales career and how transferable some of those skills may be. So you may be not in a sales career at the moment, but you could be in a technical career, or you may not be in either. But you might be very interested in thinking about how you make your entry into this very exciting role. So we're going to talk to you about how you skill up and give you some useful guidelines on that. And then last of all, but certainly not least, you can then ask us lots of questions and hopefully we'll be able to have a nice interactive discussion. So that's the agenda for today. So what people think salespeople do, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time to look at that. I'm not going to read off the slide totally, but effectively people think salespeople pitch products. Okay. And that's effectively that. And this did actually make me laugh because I just love the last bit where he says, "Want me to stop? Buy something," and it's that whole kind of like high pressure tactics in sales. You know, people have this myth that salespeople go in, pitch a product, and don't leave until the customer actually says, "Yeah, where do I sign?" just to get them out the door. So I'm sure that's not the case. It's slightly extreme and it is a bit of a cliche, but this cliche exists because people do have misconceptions about sales. So what actually is technical sales and what does a technology seller do? So I like to pivot around the idea of the 4Ds. And this is actually what technical sellers do. And it's all it's often really said, and I think I can't remember who said it, but several people have said it, that people buy from people. And I would actually add to that, people buy from people that they trust, whom they trust. Okay. So for me, it's all about understanding what you need to do to build that trust. So how do we do that? I think the really key thing to call out is it's all about being empathetic and being authentic, being the real you. That's truly the quickest way to get people to know and trust you and to build your network, which is a very, very important thing. And ultimately what it helps you do is build credibility. All really, really key words. So let's look at the 4Ds. What are the 4Ds? We'll start with discover. So salespeople, the best salespeople in the world are all really curious. They ask lots and lots of questions. Okay. And they listen. They're great listeners. They're active listeners. They listen to the responses that the customer gives them. That then prompts a deeper discussion with more questions. Customers then ask questions and they can respond. But it's all about creating a conversation. And we can't do that if we don't ask questions and we don't stay curious. Once they've done all that discovery, it's not just discovery about the customer. They need to discover skills themselves. So they need to continually build know how. And this isn't just technical know how, it isn't just product knowledge. It is know how. It is like, how does a piece of technology or a technical solution actually help a customer do something smarter, faster, better? um, they they do a lot of discovery in terms of the people they know and the people they interact with. So they strengthen their networks. So that is the first step of the journey into technical sales. Then you develop. So I think I like to say that rather than being sales pitches, what a really great salesperson is a great translator. We're fantastic translators. We're really, really good at listening to the customer's problems, listening to the customer's dreams, ambitions, their ideas. And then we take that business problem or that business objective back to the really, really technical people within the organizations, the people who build the products and the people who actually know how the products operate to a really nth detail. The technical cloud solution architects, people like that, our product groups, our engineering teams. So we take the business requirements back to the business and we translate those. We say, this is what the customer wants. How can we as a team help build something that can demonstrate to the customer that this will deliver the value that they're looking for? And it's therefore about the next step of that. After you've done the translation, you've worked with your V team to come up with a solution. You then build the demos or use pre-built demos and you prove the value. You prove to the customer that what you're proposing is going to do exactly what it says on the tin. And then ultimately, the bit that most people, in the previous meme, would have identified with, yes, it is about gaining commitment. It is about getting the customer to say yes, but not using some pressure sales tactics or having a staring competition. It really is about, if you've done all the first steps right, it really will be a case of the customer will be, wow, this really does what I need it to do. It is going to deliver what I need. Therefore, why wouldn't I go ahead with it? So it's almost a situation of, you are, as you're working through this process, you are actually closing your customer in a really empathetic way without making them feel that they're necessarily being pressured. And then ultimately, um, the great technical sellers in the world are about relationship builders. So they build great relationships and they build great trust and they build great credibility. And they do that because they deliver. So they build great teams around them because you can't do it all on your own. It's about making sure that you go to the people within your business who can support you outside of your business as well. Great partnerships with partners or external providers who might be able to come together to provide something different, something innovative. And so V Team, like it's going out of fashion. And ultimately, what drives all of that is communication. It is literally learning to communicate at various different levels with various different people, understand what those agendas are, and then collaborating with the customers, with colleagues, with partners to help deliver the solution. And it's about taking ownership of your part of that project, of that vision, and also then empowering other people to take ownership of their responsibilities and their part of the delivery cycle. So that's the 3Ds. And then the last one is kind of pretty obvious, but I put it there anyway because it's duplicate. Once you've done all of that, it's review what went really well, review what didn't go so well, because that will provide great platform for you to learn on how to get better, how to improve, and then you just repeat the process. And I know it sounds very simplistic, but that ultimately is what sales, technical selling is. Now, I'll go on in a little bit to something. This looks remarkably simple, but really everything that technical sellers do are about fall in one of those areas. Okay, so it's learning to translate technical solutions into your customer's language. Learn to speak their language because they're not really going to sit there unless they're really technical themselves. But if you're talking to someone who's a business like a CFO or a CEO, they're not going to know if you start spouting about machine learning algorithms to them. But what they do know is that they need to somehow join up all of the silos, all of the data silos that they have across their organization. They need to pull together and derive business intelligence and actionable insights. And with that actionable insights, that data becomes empowering. It allows them to do one of four things or all of the four things. So it allows them to recruit and retain the best people, helping them empower employees. It allows them to engage customers in new ways, make customers stay loyal, uh, get existing customers to buy more, gain new customers. It helps them to look at how their operations could be optimized, working smarter, working faster, doing things more efficiently, taking down the cost of manual operations, for example. And it helps them most of all to think about how they can transform their products so that they can stay ahead of the curve and delight their customers. So it's an iterative cycle. So that ultimately is, if we talked about understanding how to translate business requirements into technical requirements, this is the second leg of the journey, because when you're presenting the solution back to the customer, you need to be able to present it in a way that they can understand. And usually it's around how this will benefit their organization. So I think the slide may have just stuck, but let's go up. Right. So the next one is, it's the last one really, but it's what I call skilling up. So this is effectively how we skill up, what I think is needed in order to become a great technology salesperson. So we've got a bit of tech sales stuff on the side there, but what the letters all stand for, effectively, the first one is teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, you are only as good as the team that you pull together, and your customer is part of that team as well. And if you can get your customer to feel like they're part of the team, then that's actually the majority of the problem solved. Because if the customer feels invested in making the project successful, then effectively you've done your job as a salesperson. Okay. And the other thing is, there's quite a few people who have said to me in the past that they are hesitant about entering a technology sales career because they're worried that they won't be able to learn the technical products or upskill technically quickly enough, and they're worried that basically they won't be able to have conversations with customers and show that, you know, in a credible way. But the reality of it is, I actually think that it's EQ that's equally as important, if not more important. So EQ is all about emotional intelligence, and it is the mix between the two that makes a truly great salesperson. Because a salesperson who can just spout technical product information without being able to relate it and make it relatable for the person or the people that they're selling it to isn't probably going to succeed. So emotional intelligence and soft skills around all of that, communication, collaboration, are really, really key and just as important as technical skilling. And the C is for consulting, not pitching. So back to the meme, but if we looked at it, then you know it isn't about pitching. It's very consultative. It's all about, as we said before, listening, understanding, replaying to the customer exactly your understanding of their situation and how you can help. And last of all, the best salesperson, one of the best salespeople that I ever knew, was a guy who dealt with the largest banks in the world, and he was consistently a top performer. And the reason why he was such a great salesperson was because he was incredibly humble. He always wanted to learn. He always made the customers feel like they were the experts in their business and that he was there to understand their business so that he could then be useful and helpful to them. And that humility um, was a great basis for creating that rapport and that credible relationship with the customer. Show, not tell, super important. It's so many people pitch, they show lots of slides, but they don't actually demo and they don't actually show the value. They don't interact with users. And it's so important because that's nothing more powerful than to actually show a customer how it's working and to share customer experiences and use cases. And we were saying earlier that the other thing is all part of a growth mindset. Always be learning. There's always room for improvement. We can always get better um, and be better versions of ourselves. The L is for leverage your network. We've talked about this before. Super important to leverage your network, internal and external, and help grow that network as well. And then empathize and listen. Super key. And then ultimately, the last one is staying curious. I've put it down there again because I think it's so, so important. So if you've looked at the slide and listened to what we've talked about in the last 10 minutes, then you will know that probably a lot of those skills are transferable from non-technical sales careers. So um, it's certainly not something that you should discount. You know, you should absolutely consider moving into technical sales if you're interested in people, if you like helping other people to achieve more. These are all things which I think if you have the desire to succeed and the willingness to learn, then you will be able to upskill to become a great technology salesperson. So that's it from me, and we can move on to the panel.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Simone. I'm sure that the people on the call will have some questions for you later on. So before we get on to the questions, though, I did want the other panelists to introduce themselves. So I would actually start off with Annette. And Annette, I would love for you to introduce yourself and what you do, and how your journey into technical sales and how you got there and why you stay, basically.
Okay, I'll be succinct. I won't go on. But look, so my name's Annette Garner. I am an Azure specialist. seller, and I focus on data and AI workloads. I'm in the health teams, hospitals, and a few private providers of healthcare. And my main role really is with these customers is to help them on their data journey and get them to understand the benefits that Azure as a public cloud bring to them as an organization with their own metrics. But I suppose ultimately that my biggest passion and my driver is how that helps the clinicians and how that helps us, because we're all patients and we all use the NHS, what impact that has on us. So it can be from migrating a SQL database, but what's the downstream effect on that, on reporting metrics into the centre on COVID, how busy an A&E is, how many nurses were working in the last week, who's got COVID, that kind of thing. So that's me. That's kind of what I do. But God, my journey has been huge to get here. Before I was an Azure specialist, I worked in the industry. So looking at kind of point AI solutions that could help the NHS market. And that was an amazing job that showed me so much of the technology, not just in the UK with Microsoft, but all around the world. And I love that. But my background is economics. So I went and did economics at uni. Kind of went off to the Bank of England and got I'll be honest with you all, I'm not sure if the students on the line, but kind of got a bit disillusioned with that space and the Bank of England. And then I went off into sales because I was missing that human connection with people. And I love my numbers, I love my data. But so I started in sales, and then I went through a number of different sales roles into healthcare sales because I just love, I've got a few doctors in my family, but it's just, health is what we all have. And I just know there's ways in which we can deliver health better. And this was my little skill around numbers. And as I started to understand technology and how you drive numbers into the hands of clinicians, how that could have an impact on a group of people saving lives ultimately. So that's a bit of background on me. So happy to talk to that. I shall pass on.
That's an amazing story because, you know, it's very relevant to everyone's lives for the past 2-3 years of what you do and the work that you've done. So we'll come back to that. And the next introduction that I would love to do is Charles's. So Charles, I'll come to you and then we'll move on to Rosanna.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. So yeah, my name is Charles Elegbade. I'm a data and AI specialist as well, like Annette. But I am more focused around banking and capital markets. So my main focus is to help, banking and capital markets organizations to execute their data strategies. So, and this is something that I personally find very interesting, and I'll allude to that when I talk about my journey. But I guess the reason why is because, as we know, the financial industry is the backbone of, many nations, of, the country as well. So it's very interesting to see how financial organizations, work internally and how really how they start and their data journey internally. So what do I do in terms of that? So there's a lot of the things that Simone actually spoke about. I think the first thing is really the consultative approach. So really understanding what problems and what challenges do these organizations have. And I think the second thing is really around thought leadership. So there's a lot of knowledge that I feel Microsoft has to share, and that's mainly around the resources. So the thought leadership doesn't necessarily only come from myself, but it comes from what we call our V team. So as a data and AI specialist, we work with cloud solution architects, customer engineers, the product group. So it's all around bringing together that massive Microsoft engine and leveraging that to actually deliver something to the customer. And my role is kind of the centerpiece where, I tie all of that in, encourage the team, but also encourage the customer. So in terms of my journey, I think it's an interesting one because I never wanted to be in sales. So if I saw this event in the past, I probably would have joined myself. But I've been at Microsoft for 2 years. Previously to Microsoft, I'll track back. I initially wanted to go into investment banking. So that was my point around me being very interested in finance. I have a personal interest in finance. So I did internships at, Barclays, Morgan Stanley, but kind of figured that wasn't for me. I wanted a role that was more, consultative, a role that I can actually speak to people, but I never really knew what that meant. So then I moved on to the tech world. I was really interested in tech, so ended up doing a summer internship at Google. And for me, actually speaking to people at Google, I, figured out that there's a whole new world out there within technology, and it's not just being a software developer, right? Before I thought technology was just about, coding, but that's not the case. There's actually so many amazing roles within technology companies. So then I started exploring other technology companies, and Microsoft was one of them. And I think that the key thing for me and why I ended up in sales within Microsoft was, number one, speaking to people internally within Microsoft and actually learning more about what the specialist role means, because I myself did have that bias that the specialist role is purely sales, like being a car salesman. That was my view as well, I have to admit, but it very much changed when I spoke to people, understood that this role is more around being a thought leader and a consultant rather than a salesperson. So that's how I am now, and it is a role that you will really, really find to be quite, I think, the opposite of sales, in my opinion. It's more of a consultative role, but that's me. And yeah, I'll pass it on. I think the next person is Rosanna.
Thank you so much, Charles. Yeah, Rosanna, I will pass it over to you.
Hi, evening everyone. So my name is Rosanna Halley. I'm also an Azure specialist, but unlike Annette and Charles, I actually look after more infrastructure rather than data and AI. I sit in the education sector here at Microsoft. So I have just because I have a huge passion for education, pretty much. I come from quite an academic family, so pretty much everyone in my family has multiple degrees. We actually love school. I don't know why. I think it's an African thing. But we've always been really interested in kind of learning and stuff. And I've always thought it's great for kind of everyone to have access to really good education and education that everyone deserves. And in order for us to do that, we need good technology now, and people need to have kind of the right tech skills from early on. And because we all know about kind of the gender gap for women in tech and stuff like that. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I was really excited to go into the education team when the role came up. So for me, background, I have an undergrad in business. So my background is a little bit odd. I have an undergrad in business. I did 3 years of business at university. And my plan was to go into finance like Charles. I was really excited by finance at the time, but actually went on to do my master's in computing. So it was a complete switch from kind of business into kind of the tech world. That was when I actually learned to code and kind of learn about technology. That was my first instance of technology at my 4th year of university. And I actually planned to be a software engineer. I thought I'd be a developer because I thought, again, it was kind of like what I thought you had to do with a CS background like myself. I didn't really think of kind of the other roles that might be available out there for me to do. So I had planned to go into that, but then the opportunity came up with Microsoft to do the graduate program, and it sounded much more exciting. And it sounds odd, but I really didn't have a feel that I was going into sales. And really, even now, when people say I'm in sales, sometimes I completely forget, and I'm like, yeah, I am in sales actually. But because it's so different within technology that you don't feel like a seller. Like I don't wake up and think, oh, I'm a seller, because I spent so much time speaking to customers rather than kind of pitching, as we've talked about already, like presentation decks and stuff like that. I usually, sellers will spend time an hour just talking to a customer without actually doing the presentation piece. So it's a really interesting part of the tech world. And I think, you know, sellers bring a lot of value because we spend every day with customers, we understand their problems, we take that back to the business, you know, we have an impact on, you know, where we're going to land in regards to numbers. And I really love that. It's like a direct, this is what we've done, this is what we've delivered. So that's kind of me. I'm really excited to kind of be here tonight. Looking forward to any question anyone has. And of course, feel free to connect with me as well post the call. But that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosanna. And Simone, I will pass over to you because I think you have a fun story as well regarding your degree.
Yes, a very fun story. So, my degree was actually in English and drama. Absolutely nothing to do with tech at all. But back to what I said earlier about EQ and emotional intelligence, a lot to do with people and a lot to do with understanding what makes people tick. Because if you think about it, if you read literature, if you read lots of books and you're into drama and plays, it's all about emotion. It's all about how people feel, why people do the things they do. And I've always been super, super interested in that. But here's the tech bit. There's always a spin. So even though my degree was in English and drama, I do come from Singapore. I was born there. I didn't actually come to the UK until I was 18 to do my degree at University of London. Best place ever. And it was brilliant because for those of you who've been to Singapore, you will know that it's extremely modern and everyone there, I mean, I think they have a mobile phone surgically attached to their arms because they are tech mad out there. They're into gadgets. They're really, really into technology. So I come from a background where technology just is a part of life. So for me, I actually started off my sales career, and it is sales, in recruitment. And I was recruiting social workers. So, you know, some very interesting cases of like literally having to find social workers for organizations like Centerpoint and Mind and Shelter and people like that. Oh, our social worker hasn't turned up. Can you find someone to cover the shift from now till midnight? And it was literally that. So high pressured environment, selling the job to a pool of locum social workers, and then helping to build those interpersonal skills and also helping to solve a customer's problem. So lots of really interesting backgrounds. And it wasn't until I went from recruiting social workers to recruiting technology people, so everyone from computer programmers to CIOs back in the day, that I decided that tech sales was what I wanted to get into. So I went off and I sold um, literally everything from switches to hubs, LAN networking equipments, and some of my biggest accounts that I landed from scratch were people like the BBC, the Ministry of Defense. And I fell in love with how technology could transform people's lives, the way people do things, you know, the the value that they could deliver, the life changing. It's like Annette said, life saving in some cases. Um, just innovation that really just transforms everything. So for me, that was my foray into sales. And now I lead a team of Azure solution specialists in the media, telco, and professional services sector. And we help customers do really exciting stuff with our tech and love it, you know, still love it as much as I did 20 years ago. So there you go. You don't need a technical degree to end up in technology sales.
No, no, you definitely don't. And as you can see, that's why we chose our panelists, because they're extremely diverse from extremely diverse backgrounds. And we did do this on purpose, I promise, because one of the main reasons for this session is actually to encourage diverse applicants when it comes to technical sales careers. So there's one question I particularly wanted to ask the panel. I'll start off with Simone, because you mentioned about recruitment. And I wanted to ask you, you know, I just mentioned that diversity is a challenge in tech, and I want to know the extent of it and how we can help, basically, and why we need more diversity in technical sales.
So now this is really interesting because it depends on whether you're looking at the UK or the US. But if you look at diversity in tech, it's not a pretty picture. And this is the reason why I, like the rest of us on this panel, are super passionate about this. In the US, I think the proportion of diverse candidates in tech or diverse people in tech is something like 32%, which is actually fairly high when you consider what it is in the UK. Because in the UK, I think it's about 30%. But then it depends on Europe as well. So I mean, that was Computer World that did that survey, and that survey was a survey that they did way back in 2020. But that wasn't tech sales; that was just tech. So that covers everything in tech. I couldn't find any statistics for tech sales, but I would say in all the teams that I've worked with across the years, you probably find that technical sales, it's single digit figures most of the time, I would say, in organizations, diverse people in technical sales. Probably maybe 10, higher in Microsoft because we really, really focus on encouraging diversity and inclusion. But generally speaking, in industry, it's somewhere between 10 to 15%, 20 if you're really pushing it. So why is diversity important? Diversity is really important because it encourages everybody to look at things from a different perspective. It brings creativity. It brings a whole multitude of different ideas, and also different cultures, which is so important because otherwise we're just going to keep agreeing with each other, and that if we keep doing the same things over and over, we'll just get the same outcomes. And I think Einstein said that's the definition of insanity. So I really think what we need to be truly transformational is to have diverse opinions, diverse perspectives, and diverse ideas. So I fully support anybody who wants to take a step into this role. And, like Rosanna said, all of us are very open to mentoring, helping, coaching anybody. You can contact us on LinkedIn and connect. And, clearly we'll be more than willing to give assistance where we can. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. You raised some amazing points, and I'll open up the question to some of the panelists as well. If there's anything that you want to weigh in on what I just said, why diversity is so important, not just in technical sales, but in the workplace in general. But before that, I just wanted to say that for the people that have joined the conversation, if you have any questions, please don't be shy, pop them in the chat, and Hanson will raise a hand if we do have any questions. So Annette, you did come off mute, so I will pass over to you.
Yeah, and I suppose I wanted to say one of the big factors for me that gave me confidence in my career and my path has been around, I really respect the clinicians. And if you look at the clinicians or the people that run hospitals, they're so diverse. They're from all over the world. And I think these are the great levelers of humanity, like medicine, maths. It's not a certain sex, a certain age group, a certain religion. If you're in a hospital and you look at an A&E room, there's nurses, doctors, check staff, porters from everywhere, every spectrum. And that's so important that as you look at the technology that they're buying, their staff and the patients they treat are from all over. So I have just as much a say and a validity in my role in showing them what they can achieve with the technology that I'm working with them on, because I just look at them and I go, oh my God, you're from everywhere, and that's fabulous. I feel, you know, part of that more international community. So I've always taken that confidence that my customer base is diverse, and they want to see the technology companies bring people with that diverse experience to talk to them. There's a lot about authenticity and health about you. Yes, you do have to understand the flow and a bit about the numbers, but you know, we come in there as experts in our own right about the workloads and the public cloud, and I think that customer base really respects that, from the Microsoft, the Azure health team, but obviously it's broader than just Azure. There's obviously the Office 365, the Teams people that work in health, but yeah, they totally respect us, and I think they like that we're from a broad range, from a broad spectrum of religions, ethnicities, and experience, for sure.
Thank you so much, Annette. I completely agree with everything that you said. I am aware that you know, we are slightly running over. So if the panelists are okay, do you mind staying on for 5 more minutes just for a few extra questions?
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. So I actually wanted to ask you, Charles and Rosanna, as well, because you're pretty early in career, I think, as you mentioned, into sales yourself. And something that I was very curious about when I started applying for jobs and everything like that, or transitioning into jobs, was, you know, what does day-to-day life look as a seller or a technical specialist, right? Because Charles, you mentioned that you work with account executives, you work with cloud solution architects, you work with so many different internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. So both of you, I'd love to know what your day-to-day life looks like as a specialist, and I'll go to you, Charles, first, and then I'll come to you, Rosanna.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so no day is the same, I would tell you that.
Yeah.
I think I need to, because I think this role as a seller is what you make of it. So it's a role that it's almost how I like to describe it, like running your own business, per se. So you are almost defining what your day looks like, and also what you're going to make the most of your time with. But if I were to categorize it, I'd say it definitely, number one, falls under speaking a lot with customers. It is a sales role. You know, a specialist role is a sales role, so that means interacting a lot with customers. And this kind of interaction can be visiting customers, but in a COVID world, so it's actually sometimes via Teams, and understanding, you know, what customers' pain points are, following up with customers. The next thing is actually around working with your internal team. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of planning that has to be done and a lot of collaboration. So, you know, I personally spend a lot of time with my counterpart infrastructure sellers, my counterpart cloud solution architects, as well as wider teams, to understand what resources we can actually leverage to help customers, because fundamentally, all the work we're doing is really centered around, and you know, supporting customers with their, you know, for me, data journey. Another part of it is strategic planning. So this role also has a strategic element of it, because, you know, fundamentally we do have targets that we have to meet within Azure. The way these targets work isn't necessarily, you know, like the common targets that you may think of. So it's not like we're all sweating every day. But, you know, with this, we have to deal with numbers, and there's obviously some planning element we have to do. So we at least have a roadmap to follow. And I'd say another part of it is actually, and a big part of it is learning. That probably takes up more than 50% of my time in my role, and I don't think that'll change. And the reason why I say that is because if you work in a technology company, things are always changing. Technology is not something that's stagnant. So you're always going to be expected to learn about the different technologies every single day. And you're never going to be an expert, and that's a key thing, I believe. Not coming in thinking that you need to know everything about technology, because you never will. And you should be comfortable being uncomfortable. Another learning aspect is also, I believe, learning how to leverage the people around you and work collaboratively. I think that is so critical, because especially within a large technology organization like Microsoft, there's so many resources in terms of people and different things. So the more that you learn to, work best with people, the further I believe you go in terms of the role, because you can't do everything yourself. There's just so much. So that pretty much covers the bulk of what I do. I'm sure there's other things, but that is probably the main stuff. So I'll probably quickly pass it on to Rosanna.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you covered kind of most of what we do. It's a lot, there's a lot to do. And I think that's a great thing about the sales roles. You kind of have a very wide range of activities in which you engage with. And I think people forget that, as a seller, you spend most of your time problem solving. I think people think about sales and they think, oh, you go and you pitch your product, and then the customer's like, yes, we go. But actually, you go into a meeting and the customer is like, I've got this issue. How can you help me? And I spend most of my time talking to my customers about how Microsoft can support with any kind of challenges that they're facing, rather than me starting with the product. It's often not a product-led conversation. So I would say problem solving is a lot of the time. And I think that's why we call it more solution sales rather than kind of just product sales, because you can think of everything as one small element, but actually it's the solution that's important, the outcome that's important. So as Charles says, a lot of that is learning, and you would have noticed we're all kind of aligned to industries. And part of that learning is also learning about your industry, spending time with your industry leads. You might attend events. Before COVID, you might go to I would go to education conferences. I'm sure Charles would go to kind of finance, and Annette would go to health. That all of that is part of learning as well. But yeah, I would say Charles covered most of it, but I would just add that problem solving element is, I would say that's what I spend most of my time kind of doing.
No, thank you so much for that. And I think most careers in tech, in fact, all careers in general, problem solving is a huge element. And I think sellers are such amazing facilitators for everything. They are the center of customer knowledge that pretty much all technical resource has to go to. So they're pretty much the center of everything, I would say. So Hanson, was there a question in the chat at all?
Yes, Cecilia, there's a question in the chat from Isa. Firstly, Simone, they love your story, and I think they should run a childcare recruitment company themselves. So yeah, like the question goes, for a senior sales professional without tech experience, what's an ideal starter role in tech sales? And are there any practical tips you could share on making this transition?
Is this question for me? And then we can
I believe,
ask. Yeah?
I believe, you can start it off, and then we can potentially pass it on to the other panelists as well.
So, sorry, how do I pronounce name? Is it Isa or Isha? Don't know. Anyway, she's on mute. So, I'll.
Sorry, I didn't realize I could take myself off mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me? Oh,
yeah.
I didn't realize I could take myself off. You said it right the first time. It's
Isa.
Not many do, so well done.
Fabulous. Okay, I just always want to make sure, because I've had my name pronounced in many different ways. I won't tell you what they are on this call, but yeah, not very nice. But so anyway, it's a really interesting thing. So I would say, to your first question, I'd actually ask you a question there, and that is, I think the ideal starter role will depend where your passions lie. Okay, because it really, anything that you do, you will be successful at landing a role. And I think it was Richard Branson who said, when someone asked him, what career advice can he give someone? And he said, do what makes you happy. And it really is as simple as that. Annette talked about her passion, for bringing together maths and medicine. And that's why she works as a data and AI specialist in healthcare. I've talked to you about my passion for people because I started in recruitment. and then I moved into tech and I taught myself the tech skills because I saw how tech could transform people's lives. But I've sold every kind of tech. I've sold tech from like massive voice networks to voice and data networks to IP telephony to cloud to virtualization. The tech's almost irrelevant. It's what can the tech do for the people you're selling it to. And I think that's so you need to probably spend a little bit of time, maybe do a little bit of a mind map, a mind dump, whatever you want to call it, and basically sit down and literally map out what kind of tech gets you going. It could be consumer type tech. It could be apps. It could be, oh wow, I love this really cool mobile app and how it changes people's lives. Or I love reality, like they talk about the metaverse now, don't they? You know, having the ability to kind of use augmented reality, for example, in healthcare or, in data and IoT and all sorts of things like that. If that is your passion, then maybe go into that. But if you started off in childcare recruitment, then maybe you might be interested in something in education, you know. So I would say start with you. Start with what you're passionate about, what tech gets you excited. And then the practical tips on making the transition are really simple. Leverage your network. Find people in your network who can give you one-on-one career coaching advice. Find courses that are available. There are lots of courses available. The government, as part of the Department of Education, they're running massive programs to digitally skill up people to kind of recover and reimagine life after COVID. Get onto some of those programs, learn, equip yourself with know-how, and then you'll be able to make the transition.
Yeah,
So
and
that's my advice.
There's loads of jobs at the minute. If you're on
Yeah.
LinkedIn and you put yourself out there and connect to some recruiters, you'll see there's so many jobs post-COVID, post working from home, remote desktop. For me, oh my goodness, data flying everywhere, making dashboards, those dashboards making apps, low code, no code apps, huge marketplace. There's jobs in so many companies for everything, from developer to entry level sales to full-blown account management. So there's so much stuff. It's a real boom time. I think if you were talking to people on LinkedIn, you'd have loads of discussions.
Absolutely. So go for it, Isa.
Yeah, go
Go,
forward.
go.
Thank you very much.
got
Really great
this.
advice. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I think as we're running over already, let's close up this panel session. And I just want to say a huge thank you to the panelists and also Simone as the keynote speaker and the panelists as well. Thank you so much for everyone that attended, for giving up your time and attending this session. It would be great for you to share this video when it comes out with whoever's interested in technical sales as well. As I said, we want to drive the most diversity as possible when it comes to applicants. We want to see a diverse table when we sit there and talk to our customers as well, so that our behavior emulates what the customers do. So, please keep that in mind, share the video. And as Rosanna said, that if you do want to connect with any of us, please, I'm volunteering others, but I know that Rosanna did say that she's okay. Please do reach out to us after this call. If you have any questions, we'll try and help you as much as we can, because as I said, we want to see those applicants coming in for sales. LinkedIn is a great resource, so keep an eye out, and Annette mentioned this, keep an eye out for the job postings there, and LinkedIn Learning is a great resource as well. If you want some free resources for learning about coding, it could be global challenger courses or like selling courses or anything like that. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, Hanson, any final words that you want to say?
No. Thank you everyone again for joining. Like just echoing with Sita. Yeah, there's a huge gap to fill, and I think we're making good strides. So yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. And with that, I'll close off the call. So I'll pass over to you, Ravneet. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry.
That had to be said.
Thank you so much, everybody, for this very, very insightful session. As Hasita already said, this session is recorded and will be available to view on the Reactor YouTube channel, which I'm actually putting in the chats now, in the next 48 hours. And please follow our meetup group for upcoming events. This we'll have an episode every month from the EMBRACE group, so please do follow our meetup. All the upcoming episodes will be uploaded on the meetup group. So thank you, everyone. With that, I'm actually going to stop recording now.